All right. It's Monday morning. I've got a busy week coming up. I've got about 2 weeks of a real big flurry of work. But it's early in the morning and I wanted to go ahead and get at least one short video out, one short podcast with one story. But this is really a good story. It takes place it happens in North Mississippi, in my neck of the woods. That's where I live. The writer's name is Johnny, and here's what he writes. My story begins in North Mississippi in 1996. Two buddies and I, Joe and Bo, met after work to go bow hunting at a spot that we've hunted for years. October 1st is opening day for deer season here in Mississippi. This incident happened the week after. We decided to meet after we all got off work that afternoon, and since I only live a couple of hollers over, I got there first. By the time Joe and Bo got there 15 minutes later, I was chomping at the bit to get in the woods. We made a plan, we knew where each of us was headed, and agreed we'd all meet back at the truck around dark 30. We were on a 2-trail road that went 250 yards before it came to a T. Bo's stand was south of that intersection by 175 yards and then another 30 yards into the woods. Joe's stand was about halfway from the T from where we were, and then 50 yards south into the woods on a ridge overlooking a bottom facing west. My stand was 300 yards north of the T and then about 20 yards into the woods overlooking the road and a creek that ran at the end of the T. Beyond that creek was a property line. We all headed out to our respective stands with about 3 hours to hunt. It took me 30 minutes to get to my stand because I take 3 steps and listen, and then 3 steps and listen. My granddaddy taught me this trick, and it has often paid off with deer harvested before I even got to my stand. When I did get to my stand, I looked around and observed the perfect afternoon. The wind was so calm I could hear a cricket poot. I was sitting on the fence line adjacent to the next property looking into some cutover with a great view of both the 2-trail road and the creek beyond. I was just sitting there enjoying God's creation while listening as the day faded into night and the sounds of the day were replaced by night sounds of crickets chirping and frogs croaking along the creek bed. It was also peaceful and relaxing. Any hunter knows this is prime time when deer start moving either to their beds or to their feeding areas. As I sat there, I heard something behind me and to the right. I couldn't see it yet, but by the way it was moving, I knew it was a deer. Just as it came into sight, something jumped it and took off. I assumed it must have winded me, and that's what spooked it. A few minutes later, I heard a limb break about 30 yards behind me. This made no sense because there was 0 wind blowing. I thought it must have been a deadfall finally losing its grip on a limb that had been clinging to it after the last storm. It was starting to get dark, so I decided it was time to head back to the truck. As I pulled my lanyard up to the tree so I could tie my bow on and let it down, something walked behind me. It sounded big. I immediately thought that a buck must have been bedded down and was getting up to head to its feeding area. I looked through my peep sights, hoping to get a shot if it walked out in front of me, but it had gotten too dark by now and I couldn't see my sights. I decided not to get down, thinking if I didn't spook it, I might have a shot at it the next day. So I stayed there waiting for it to move on, but it stopped about 20 yards behind and to the west of me. I figured I was busted, but it didn't run. By now it was pitch black out except for the moon peeking through the gaps in the trees. I then had the unsettling realization that everything had gone whisper quiet. The sounds of the night had just stopped. That was when I made the executive decision to get down and head back to the truck. I tied my bow onto the lanyard, I let it down, and I started down the tree. The loud crunching of something large right behind me stopped me in my tracks and raised the hair on the back of my neck. Every nerve in my body was on end. A second later, I was flying down the tree faster than I ever had before, stopping to listen as soon as I hit the ground. I heard nothing. A few years earlier, I had seen a panther while mowing my yard right down the road from there. Now I was thinking that's what it could be. I hadn't brought a light with me because it was my practice to walk out of the woods in an effort not to spook the deer. At that moment, I was wishing I had one. As I started my walk down the two-trail road, I could clearly tell something was paralleling me about 20 yards beyond the tree line. I took a few steps and it followed. At that point, I decided either Bo or Joe had gotten tired of waiting on me and come back to check on me, but was seeing that I was okay, decided to try and scare me. And if it was them, they were succeeding. "Real funny, guys. You almost got me," I yelled. I was answered with total silence. "Very funny. Come on now. Come on out," I said. Still, there was no sound. I was getting a real uneasy feeling now. I was actually starting to get scared. That wasn't natural for me. The only thing I've ever been scared of in this whole world is a snake. I decided to forego the 3 steps, stop and listen technique and just go. The moon was up and bright and I could see down the two-trail road pretty well, so I picked up the pace. And so did whatever was following me. Maybe it's my echo in the woods, I thought. So I stopped on a dime. Whatever was there took a couple of extra steps, and now I knew it was on 2 legs. My heart was pounding. "I don't know who you are, but you don't know who you're messing with," I hollered into the night. I was about 100 yards from the tee now. I took a few steps and stopped to listen. Nothing. I started walking again and then stopped again. Still nothing. That made me feel a little easier, so I started on again. And then I heard it again, and this time it was closer. What's more, it was making a lot of heavy footfalls now, as if it didn't care if I heard it or not. In those seconds, I experienced fear like I have never felt before. All I wanted was to be out of those woods. I took off trotting towards the tee, not realizing until I was almost there that I was about to make a right angle turn and head west directly into the path of whatever this thing was. At the tee, I stopped and pulled out an arrow, holding it with my right hand, ready to stab anything that came at me. I didn't mention it before, but heading down that road to my deer stand was a downhill slope. But now I was heading back, and that meant uphill all the way to the truck. I started walking with every intention of making it out of those woods in one piece. I had only gone about 10 yards when it started again. The woods were deathly quiet. All of my senses were at full attention. I could hear my heart beating so loud I almost couldn't hear anything else, except for the footfalls or whatever was following me. It was coming closer now, not trying to be quiet at all. I had less than 100 yards to go, and I could almost feel it in my back pocket. I had almost reached a woodpile that was stacked along the road with some cedar we had split for posts that summer when I realized it had stopped following me. I didn't stop to listen, I just couldn't hear it anymore, and I took off at a dead run and didn't stop until I got to the truck. Joe and Bo were sitting there talking. "You must have shot one," they said, and then immediately asked why I was out of breath. Well, what could I say? They would think I had lost my mind. So I took the high road and said that I was almost 40 and pulling that hill had gotten to me. A week later, Joe got off early and decided to go hunting in that same place. I hadn't told him or Bo what had happened to me yet. It was just past dark when he pulled into my driveway and started banging on my door. I went outside thinking he'd gotten a deer. I could tell right away that he was excited and a little freaked out. And then I saw something in his eye that I had never seen before. It was fear. Joe was a big guy. He benched 405 pounds in competition. He could fight a bear and probably win. I asked him what was wrong. "There's something evil in those woods," he answered. I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, "It followed me," and he screamed it at me. I asked him, "What do you mean, it?" "I don't know," he said. "I don't know what it was." Then he added, "But I ain't going back." I took a deep breath and told him what had happened to me. He was a little mad at first. Why the heck, except he used a little more forceful word than heck, didn't you tell us? I should have told y'all that night, I said, but I didn't know how to without y'all thinking I've lost my mind. I told him that I had planned to tell them the next time I saw him, but I just hadn't seen him yet. After that, I told both Bo and Joe not to hunt in those woods until dark anymore, or to hunt alone. When Bo heard our stories, he thought we were just jacking with him. As far as I know, Joe was true to his word. He never went back. As for me, I never stayed in those woods until dark again. If you want to hear Joe's story, you'll have to ask him. I don't know what followed us out of the woods. So to say it was Bigfoot would only be speculation, but it was big. It walked on two legs. And this story is as true as I remember it. Getting it off my chest and not holding it in anymore is really freeing for me in a way. Thank you for the opportunity. Signed, Johnny B. Johnny, I don't know what part of North Mississippi you live in. You know, it's kind of a long stretch of the state, but you mentioned holler, so I'm guessing you live up in the northeast section of the state, maybe Prentiss County or Tishomingo, close to that area. I was over there fishing on the waterway yesterday, and man, those are some, especially in the spring. I just kept looking up in the woods while we weren't catching any fish, and I was just staring off in the woods thinking, wouldn't it be cool to see some big, huge, black, hairy thing kind of make an appearance out there in those woods, because the leaves are not fully on, so you can see through the trees, but you can also see the ground. So anything black, anything dark or big would contrast really well against those leaves. But yeah, I hear a lot of stories about, especially that northeast corner of the state near Tishomingo and up and down the Natchez Trace where those Indian mounds are. People have seen them. You know, northeast Mississippi is probably, well, the whole state of Mississippi is covered up with Bigfoot sightings. And there's some great stories that have come out and will continue to come out of this state. This is one of them. Johnny, thank you for writing it. We really appreciate it. Okay, I hope y'all guys enjoyed that short. I'm going to get to work now. I've got about 2 weeks of a big flurry of work, and then I should be pretty clean for the summer. Nothing hectic planned. Matter of fact, if anything hectic comes up, I'm probably going to turn it down. I want to have a good summer. I want to fish with my grandkids, and I want to go on a vacation, and I want to do this podcast. I want to do some things I like. I'll be 59 years old this summer, and I have spent every summer of my life just working my butt off, and I really want to take it slow, intentionally, because I'm one of these kind of guys who I can't turn work away. I mean, to me, that's just like opportunity that's just wasted. And if I've got time to do it, I take it. I'm probably going to turn some work away this summer if it pops up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast and the video, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Appreciate you.